as you're getting older now, you're starting to ask those questions that you were just mentioning. What did you want to do initially as you were growing up? What were some of those thoughts going through your head at that time about in your relationship and your walk with God, about your purpose, or career wise? What was kind of going through your mindset at that time?
Yeah, that was an interesting thing, because I think there's a fine line when you are a preacher's kid. There's a fine line because everyone kind of expects you just to jump into the ministry, and everyone just kind of expects you to fill the role that your parents filled. And I think that's a lot of pressure on kids. Not only that, but they've got pressure from multiple different sources, right? Now, I mean what I'm about to say very respectfully, so I'm not coming after anybody. I'm talking about culture,
Right.
Like culture, like there's a lot of pressure for young kids now. So every time we come to a camp and every time we come to youth events, by the end of the sermon, there's always the question, well, how many feel called to be a pastor? How many feel called to be a missionary? How many feel called to be an evangelist? And you're going to have like 98% of kids walk up to the front. Well, most of that is peer pressure, right? Like they're walking up front because no one wants to be the guy who says, I don't want to do anything for God. Well, I think for me growing up, I always got uncomfortable in those situations because I knew what ministry was. I watched my dad do it every day. I watched my grandfather do it every day. I knew what ministry entailed. And it wasn't like, I guess kind of you saw the reality of it. You didn't see the fairy book, or whatever of ministry. Like you knew exactly what it was. So I'm like, okay, like I'm not going to say yes, like that's what I'm going to be called to unless I'm actually called to it, because I'm not going to do it just because dad did it. I'm not going to do it just because grandpa did it. That's not my game.
Right.
I'm not going to, and I had a hard time as a kid because I felt like God wanted to be a part of my life and I wanted to be a part of his plan and his will. But I just wanted to make sure, like, look, I'm well aware that does not have to be behind the pulpit. And so when I was getting, I was getting closer in high school and stuff, I wasn't going to be a preacher. I wasn't going to be a full-time minister. I may help the church, but what I wanted to do was I was going to be a communications major when I went to college, and I was going to focus on, film making, editing, and commercial art, like doing logos and art for companies and stuff like that. And that was what I wanted to focus on because I wanted to make sure. I think I went into it thinking like I'm not going to make that full commitment to ministry unless I absolutely feel like that's what I need.
Right, like there was a sense of respect of this isn't a game, right? I'm not going to do it because everyone else is doing it. I need to make sure God's placed a piece on me that this is his will.
Yeah, and I think there's obviously, like, when you're young, you get a chip on your shoulder. Like, you don't want to do it just because, there's a little bit of that too. It's probably a little bit of pride that God has to work out of you when he's really called you to something. But I think it's one of those deals where I'm not going to do this just because dad and grandpa did it, and or like if your family's super involved, like, no, I want to be my own person. I want to be my own man. I want to do my own thing. And so there's a little bit of that too, but also I really believe there was a respect there. I just knew, like, I'm not going to do this. It's not right to do this. It's not fair to people to do this if I'm not called to it.
Right.
Because then you're not going to be able to really put your whole life into it because you really weren't called. And I don't mean that as a bad way, because I feel like anyone who wants to help out ministry-wise, I'm not trying to discourage that either.
Right.
I guess that point I'm trying to make there is, it's, like I said, just God's ministry is not relegated just to a pulpit. You can minister to other people in no matter what job you're on.
Absolutely.
Be the best apostolic doctor you can be. If you're a lawyer, you can be the best apostolic lawyer you can be. If you're a plumber, you can be the best apostolic plumber you can be, and you can still minister to people in those areas. That's what I'm saying. I just didn't know that full-time ministry was really what I was called to. So.
And I think, we were talking about this the other day, right? I think some of the mindset that our young people have when they're going to take up the calling of God and they don't know what it really is having that ministry life, their feet aren't on the ground, right? Like the way you're describing it, your feet was on the ground, right? You were focused. You understood that if you were to commit and make that decision, you understood what you were telling God at that point, right? But I think others, they have a view of it in which they think it may just only be preaching behind the pulpit, when it's not. And you're absolutely right. You can be a lawyer and win souls. I mean, be a soul winner. You can be a plumber. You can be an engineer. Whatever you want to do for a career, continue to go preach the word, because it's not only preached behind a platform or pulpit. And I think the way I was looking at it was, with Instagram and Facebook, people see the highlights of people's days and it looks great, but really there's a lot of different moments behind the scenes in someone's life, and that's what we don't see. And I think the same manner, young people look at ministry and they see how amazing a preacher preaches, but there's a lot more to that. That's probably like 10-20%.
Yeah, like 90% of what being a minister is not on the pulpit. Like you're on the pulpit, you're behind the pulpit for maybe like 10% of your life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like what? Let's talk about like a normal week here. You know, you have a midweek service. Most people have a midweek service, and then some people have one service on Sunday. Some people have two. So we're talking about maybe 2 to 3 times a week, and that's not counting other Bible studies and stuff you teach. But I'm talking about like strictly like behind the pulpit, what we would describe as preaching with behind the pulpit. What we would envision that. Let's out of all the hours in the week, you're maybe like 4 hours tops behind the pulpit. I mean, unless you've got multiple different church plants and stuff like that. I'm talking about the general. Right. You're behind the pulpit, like maybe 4 hours a week. And what are you doing the rest of that week? Well, you're doing everything else that ministry entails. You're going to hospitals. You're going to you're going to birthday parties. You're going to schools to visit kids. You're going to funerals. You're taking care of the church finances. You're taking care of this. You're taking care of that. I mean, there's so many other things that you're teaching Bible studies, you're running out meeting people, you know, there's so much other, and that's just if you're a full-time minister. Let's not forget that, like, right, that's not, most people are bivocational, which means they have a secular job plus they're, you know, pastoring a church too, which takes a giant leap of not only faith but commitment level, because they gotta have a foot in both worlds.
Right, absolutely. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching the show today. If you enjoyed it, make sure to follow us and subscribe so you can stay up to date with the newest episodes, and follow us on all social media platforms, so check out the links below.